All right, for those of you who don't know me, I am a professional guitarist, and while most of what I do nowadays is in the pop and rock and blues realm of things, I did study jazz guitar in college and even taught a little bit of jazz guitar at a university level. And I've made a video before explaining why guitar is difficult to learn, or really how it's different from learning a classical instrument like violin or piano and that sort of thing, and you can watch that video here. But the other day I was having a conversation with my best friend who has a master's degree in classical voice, and what I love about these conversations is a lot of times we have the opportunity to talk about our respective disciplines and help each other learn things from those disciplines, and then take them and apply them to our specific fields and things that we're working on. So today we're going to talk about what are some things that we as pop, rock, self-taught, whatever type of guitarist you are, if you're not a classical guitarist, what can we learn from classical musicians that we can then apply to our playing? So let's dive into that. Real quick, if you're new here and you like what you're seeing, please like and subscribe and comment down below. The first thing I think we can learn from classical musicians, some of you may already be doing and may not even be aware of it, and it has to do with song form and all of the functionalities that go with that. See, when you begin to study classical pieces, it becomes almost necessary to understand things like sonata form or rondo form, or the various forms that our pieces can come in, and how they introduce motifs and themes, and then how they develop those motifs to tell the story, and how they use these different sections to expand and, like I said, develop these motifs to better push the story of the piece forward. Pop songs do the same thing, they're just probably a little less complicated to our brain because we're used to it. For instance, rondo form, as I mentioned before, has a theme that it introduces, or an A section that it introduces, and then it will jump back and forth between that A section and a B section, and then an A section, and then a C section, and then an A section. And so you have this theme that comes back after every different section that we go through. And sometimes we even see that as like an A, B, A, C, A, B, A opportunity. And listeners, in the time that this form was developed and used most frequently, knew and understood that they could listen for that A section and they could kind of come back to it, and it kind of helps ground them in the piece, and they get to move with the piece and understand how it works better. We have the same thing in pop music, we just call them choruses. They also appear at different sections in the song. So we usually have verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, or verse, chorus, verse, chorus, or verse, chorus, chorus, right? There's lots of different ways that we can frame the chorus, but in most pop songs nowadays, we have a chorus that is something we can sing along to, something we can latch onto. It usually has the hook or the title of the song, and it helps ground us in that song and makes us kind of go, yeah, by the time I'm halfway through the song, I already know what's coming next. Also, as guitarists, we love guitar riffs. We love them because they come back into the song. That is a motif, and we can develop that motif, and it can grow and do cool things, and we can use it in the solo. Again, these are all classical concepts that we're applying regularly in pop music. We're just unaware of it. So why do we need to know this? Well, it has to do with how quickly we can latch onto a song or learn a song. For instance, if I'm working with a new artist, they give me a song that they want me to learn of theirs, the first thing I need to do is I need to learn the form of that song, because if it is verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, I know that I need to learn the verse, the chorus, and the bridge, and then just repeat them or develop them with that motivic development that we talked about. And all of a sudden, I'm no longer learning a 3-minute song. I'm really just learning like a minute and 30 seconds of a song, and then I repeat it. In other words, if we have a gig and we've focused on song form, we go into that gig with better preparation and better intention of how that song is to be played. Second thing we can learn from classical musicians is write it down. I remember in high school, I was in some orchestras that you wouldn't even be allowed into the rehearsal if you didn't show that you had a pencil with you. It's because, as a general rule, when you go through a guitar lesson or a rehearsal or anything like that, you forget about 80% of what is told you in those lessons and in those rehearsals. This means that when you get home to practice after a rehearsal or whatever, when you get to the gig, if you haven't written it down, you'll probably miss most of what you talked about in rehearsal. So it is imperative that you take a pencil take your notes app, whatever it is, and write down everything that happens and that you need to remember from either a rehearsal or a lesson. The third thing we can learn from classical musicians is learning to do things that we don't necessarily like or that are not necessarily easy for us. A lot of guitarists that I teach and that I talk to, the reason why they chose guitar is because it's something they love and that they're passionate about, and because they can play the music that they love. However, what that means is a lot of times they won't practice the things that are boring because it's not the fun stuff. Whereas a lot of classical musicians have developed this discipline when it comes to their practicing into the things that they do, because that's the only way to learn the music and the only way to learn the instrument in a way that is applicable to the genres that you play in with these classical instruments. A lot of my friends who are exclusively classical musicians, while they love and respect and listen to all of these incredible works from the past 500 years, give or take, most of them don't necessarily listen to classical music for enjoyment. They usually listen to pop music. And there are some people who genuinely love and adore classical music, and it's all they listen to. More power to them. For me, that's the reason why I switched from trumpet to guitar, was because I was like, wait, I don't even listen to music that has trumpet in it. I listen to music that has guitar in it. So I'd rather do that because I know I'll work harder at it because I love it more. That was for me personally. But again, these classical musicians, even though they may not always listen to opera or whatever it is they're performing, they do it. They practice the skills needed to do it. And by doing so, they make themselves better musicians, and it's something that I feel like a lot of guitarists struggle with. Now, these are just 3 little things that you can take and start applying to your own personal journey with guitar. Start writing things down. Start doing things you don't like. Start focusing on song form so you can learn and grow and start approaching songs with better intention and preparation in mind. Now, that being said, I still believe that there are plenty of things that classical musicians can learn from guitarists and self-taught musicians as well. Learning to trust your ear is a big one. So many of us have learned by taking some tabs, some YouTube videos, and then listening to records over and over again and developing our craft that way, and by learning to hear notes and play them. And that is a crucial skill, especially in our line of work. There are so many classical musicians who don't know what to do if it's not on the paper. I think that that's something that could be worked on. This also, in my mind, applies to improvisation. I think that guitarists in general are a lot more willing to make mistakes and mess around and play something bad, because that's the only way you can get better at improvising. I've played way more terrible improvised solos than I've played good solos, but that's how I got to the point where I can play good solos, is by playing those bad solos. So many classical musicians are terrified of making a mistake. And it's probably because they had a teacher or something that yelled at them, and so, you never want to make a mistake. However, there's something really freeing about being willing to just screw around and see what happens. I also think that a lot of classical musicians are kind of pigeonholed into classical music, and I think that they should chase more avenues and things. I know a lot of guitarists who study blues for a year and then get bored with that, so they study bluegrass, and that may not be the best way to learn it, but I also think approaching your instrument with that sense of wonder and whimsy might open up avenues and influence yourself to find more joy in creating, in performing, in, what you might not think is even possible with your instrument. But I want to hear from you guys. What are some things that you feel like you could learn from classical musicians? What are some things that you feel like classical musicians could learn from us as guitarists? Are there some of these things that you've already been doing? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Mac Wright. If you're new here, please like and subscribe. If you're returning, thank you so much for being a part of the channel. And go make someone else's day better. We'll see you around.